Well, welcome everyone to our Trailblazer webinar today. My name is Cheryl O'Connor. I'm CEO and co-founder of Income Conductor, an award-winning retirement income planning technology that engages your clients in the planning process and provides them with a written plan that gives them the confidence and peace of mind they seek throughout their retirement. Our Trailblazer series highlights the people in and outside our industry who are forging new paths and developing new ways to achieve success while providing great outcomes for clients. We welcome your questions, so please type them into the Q&A box and we will address them at the end of the webinar. Joining me today is my partner Tom, who will monitor the Q&A for us. So it's a great pleasure for me to welcome our Trailblazer today, Mark Duffey, co-founder, president, and CEO of Everest Funeral Package. Prior to Everest, Mark worked for Mellon Bank in Pittsburgh and Houston from 1980 to 1989, becoming a vice president in the National Accounts Commercial Lending Department before heading Mellon's mezzanine finance area on the Worldwide Merchant Bank. After Mellon, Mark co-founded a financial services workout consulting firm before co-founding Carriage Services, a firm he helped grow into one of the largest funeral home organizations in the world, listed on the New York Stock Exchange with the symbol CSV. Mark is widely quoted in an industry expert in the end-of-life planning, and has been featured in Barron's, the CBS Early Show, Designing Spaces on Lifetime Television, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, USA Today, and the Chicago Tribune, among others. Welcome, Mark.
Great to be here.
Well, it's great to have you. So, can you tell our audience about what led you to focus on the funeral industry after working in commercial oil and gas lending at Mellon Bank? That's quite a leap.
Well, I have to explain this often because people go, how did that ever happen? Even with my children aren't even really sure how all that happened. But I worked at Mellon between Pittsburgh and Houston, transferred to Houston in the 80s, and that's when the oil and gas business really took a tumble. So I ended up, working out, tough deals, because when oil's at $80, economics are a whole lot better than when they're at $5. And so there was a lot of things to have to fix. You had to be on your toes. You had to really, kind of figure out things in a rapidly changing environment, and it was very, very difficult. When I left, I kind of started my own turnaround business because I was doing a lot of that at Mellon. But during the process, we kind of got a little sick of fixing people's problems and wanted to kind of go on the offense. But we want to go on the offense in a business that was really very, very safe, because in the early 90s, you might remember it was rather tumultuous, and things were happening in the market. So we didn't want to make the mistakes that a lot of people have made. So let's go to a safe business. So we made a list of 5 companies, of 5 businesses, and we said, let's look the first one. We did that one. We couldn't get into that, so we ended up doing the second one, which was get into the funeral home business, of which I knew nothing about. In fact, I went home and told my wife we were going to get into a business, and she said, well, do we have to tell our friends? And said, no. So for years we were just in investments. But the investments were buying funeral homes, because in the funeral home business there are over 20,000 funeral homes in the United States. There are more funeral homes than there are car dealerships.
Wow.
So, and most of them at the time, 90+%, were independent, mom and pop operated businesses that, for whatever reason, needed to transition out of ownership, whether it was for tax reasons or whether it was children that weren't interested in taking over the business, or a combination. That their people wanted to sell, and these are long life businesses and funeral business has the lowest rate of failure of any business in the United States. So
Hmm.
it made sense. We started in 91, of course, not knowing anything about the industry, but we were very entrepreneurial. So you can imagine talking to funeral directors and saying, are you a funeral director? And no. How many funeral homes do you own? Like none. You'll be the first, and nobody really wanted to be the first, but fortunately we found one, and then we kind of expanded from that, and we were known for our culture and not top down but bottoms up kind of management style, which ended up being very popular. So we ended up taking the company public in 1996, and then we got recruited to the New York Stock Exchange in 1996, sorry, because we were one of the fastest growing non-tech companies on NASDAQ.
Wow.
When I got into that business, you can imagine this is a business that generally the last thing that was a big improvement in the business model was embalming, and that was in the Civil War. So other than switching out motorized hearses for horses, not a whole lot has changed in that business. And one of the models of parts of the business, the model of selling prepaid funerals or pre-need funerals, which is a very, very big part of the business. And advisors probably run into that in the field with their clients. Some may have those. They're sold by funeral homes to take care of everything, but it's already paid for. So for instance, you're paying for a $10,000 funeral, you're going to probably use a life insurance policy to do a specialty one, pre-need life, but that $10,000 policy is going to cost you a one-time payment of probably $10,000, and not a lot of value there. And if you're going to pay it over 10 years, you'll probably pay $20,000 for that $10,000 policy. So
Wow.
why would anybody do that? Well, the
Yeah.
reason they're doing it is that probably their spouse passed away. They don't want to leave the burden on their children. And, starting in the 60s, that was that was the best that there is. It's highly regulated. And the funeral home sells it to lock you in. So if you had paid $20,000 for a big ornate funeral and decide you just want to do a simple cremation, you could do that, but you're not getting any money back. So that business had been around for a long time, and I just thought that there was a much better answer. So around 2000, I started talking with EDS and General Electric and some folks at MIT about a new strategy, and out of that came Everest, and I ended up selling my shares in Carriage and starting Everest, and it's been a lot of fun ever since.
Wow. So it certainly is a solid business to go into, right? Death and taxes. Those are certainties.
Absolutely.
Everybody's going to go through it. So tell us a little bit about Everest. What is it? And then maybe we can switch over and talk about the benefits of using your services for advisors and why they should really incorporate end-of-life planning into their financial planning process.
Great. Well, Everest is a funeral concierge service, and most people go, "What is that? I've never even heard of such a thing." Well, we act as a consumer advocate for families that have to go through planning a funeral. Think of OnStar for funerals is probably a good description. We're a call center based and technology based company. We don't own funeral homes. We don't sell funeral goods or services. We don't have a PPO list of anything. You can use any funeral home anywhere in the world, and we'll act as your advisor along the way. Generally, we partner with life insurance companies, and they add our service as a rider onto their policies, whether they're a group benefit policy as an employer benefit, or whether they're an individual product like, for instance, Transamerica. So how it works is, let's say you have a loved one, it's 2 a.m. in the morning, you're at a hospital, loved one passes away, nurse turns to you and say, "What do you want to do?" And you go, I don't know what to do. He said, "But my uncle who just passed away, he had a Transamerica policy, and he said, if something happens to me, call Everest." And so they just Google our name. There's a big phone number there, call anywhere in the world, call in, say, my uncle passed away to so-and-so. I don't know anything else, but boy, I need help. they immediately gets escalated to one of our senior advisors who are licensed funeral directors who work for us. And they'll contact the person immediately. We'll kind of settle things down with the hospital because nobody's doing anything at 2 a.m. Except we're going to kind of get everything prepared for the next day to have a meeting, all virtual, with the family or just an individual to figure out what do they want to do. Do they want to have a service or not? Burial, cremation? Are there religious issues involved? Or there's going to be transportation across country borders? Is there language issues? Family squabble issues most of the time. So we kind of figure out what they want, what they don't want. Then we go into the market and we will call all the funeral homes. Now, although we do have all of their prices in the United States, Canada, and the UK, the average funeral home does 100 funerals a year, less than 2 weeks, so they're not that busy. And they do know who we are. So when we're talking to them, we say, here's what we want, here's what we don't want, and what can you do for us? It's about that time that they just start to drop their prices significantly because they know, for one thing, that they have an opportunity, but not guaranteed anything. And they do know they're going to get paid, and they do know us. And so they know us to be impartial, and the family is going to make the decision. And interestingly, it's not usually at the lowest price. It's the highest perceived value. So go back to the family, show them all of their options, and then they select what they want. In the process, we probably save them thousands of dollars.
Wow.
But they didn't have to go from funeral home to funeral home. They could stay at the couch, at home. We're doing all the legwork, just like an advisor would do. And then we'll contact funeral home, tell them who the client is, have them put together the contract, we'll review it, and then have them take it over and get it signed. So the sales process is over. We're not buying anything else. We do the same thing with the cemetery if there's going to be a burial. And then 6 months later, if they want a marker or a monument, they can call us back up and we'll kind of go through the same process. So it's an advisor, but we don't touch the money. We're just there to give our expertise. And at the same time, on the life insurance side, every one of our carriers agrees to a quick pay formula, which is only needing a funeral director certificate, not a traditional death certificate, which can take a month or two. And those we can get immediately. And so the proceeds of the insurance policy can be paid in as little as 48 hours. And so the funeral home knows they're going to get paid. The family knows they don't have to pull out credit cards and take care of everything and handle it that way. Now, that's how it works with the life insurance policy. It doesn't have to work that way all the time, especially with advisor. Families have liquidity. They don't have to worry about that. But the service is exactly the same. Whether or not it's a group, an individual, or if it's just a individual service contract. And so we've found that that's what consumers really like that, because you're in a very tough spot. And we also find that our client is primarily female. And so, benefits for advisors, there's 3 that I can think. One is to expand and differentiate your practice. Funeral planning should be a part of everybody's financial plan, but almost never is. And why is that? Well, number one, nobody wants to talk about it. And number 2, most people aren't experts in it. They don't know what to do. They just kind of say, well, go to the funeral home and take care of it. But their way of taking care of it is to sell them a pre-need funeral plan, which is not very economic, and it locks you into the funeral home and you can't move. So it's not a very good opportunity, but nobody really wants to go there. So it's usually left out. But if funeral planning were brought into part of the plan, it provides a more holistic approach to what the practice can be. And you can use it in review sessions and whatever to nudge them a little bit to be able to do it, but not to have to do it yourself as the advisor, because most advisors don't know anything about funerals either. Nobody did. I didn't know anything when I got into the business, and I had lost both my parents, and I needed one of our advisors to get me through, because it's not just the expertise, but it's also the emotional issue related to it. And that leads us into the second part, which is retention. One of the reasons life insurance companies like to do us is our retention on life policies is very high. And
Hmm.
so once people have this, they don't want to lose it. It's the same thing with a client that's let's say they're male and they're looking to pass away. Everybody knows the McKinsey study, 75% of the time the spouse is going to take that and leave and take the estate and go somewhere else. Uh, and so if you're talking about uh, funeral planning, especially with us, we can engage that spouse because if you ask the guy, he's generally going to say, I don't care. Throw me in a pine box and bury me in the backyard. Who really cares is the spouse because she is the one who's going to be doing all of the work.
Hmm.
And because of the fact that she's having to go through this process and go through it alone, when she thinks that this should be part of what the advisor is helping me with, it's no surprise that 75% of the time people are leaving because you basically have the spouse is feeling left alone and ignored. And it also has, but by engaging with, the new definition of the once he passes away, the new client is her and the kids.
Hmm.
And this is a great way to go multi-generational and develop those relationships so they're in place when the client actually passes away, and now you have a new client. And then third is acquisitions. One of the greatest things about Everest that people like are referrals. Because of the fact that, a lot of life insurance, you have to buy leads and that sort of thing. Not if you have a policy that has Everest on it, because you'll generally get 3 to 5 referrals off of that. Same thing works with the advisor. If you have a client that's had a great experience, they're going to go talk about it, and they're going to tell their friends about it. And really, what the advisor did was just set them up with the help. They didn't have to really do anything, but they come across as more of the trusted advisor that if you can get me through this, there's a lot more that I think you can get me through. And people are attracted to that because they want more of that. We also have courses and workshops, both in person and online, that can be used to attract, or educate existing clients, but attract new potential clients by one of those things that they do. This is something that nobody wants to talk about, but really everybody needs to talk about. And if you approach it right, with facts, figures, things you need to know, people will talk about it a lot. And that's word of mouth. That generates word of mouth. It builds the whole character of the practice, and it becomes more holistic and more human.
Well, a lot of very successful advisors have regular seminars for their clients where they bring in experts to talk about various areas, like end of life planning and funeral services to educate their clients. And they encourage their clients to bring friends to these seminars as, prospects. So I think it's a huge value add because, as you said, it's not something that a lot of people are discussing with them. And the problem where you have to take action hits you at one of the worst times of your life.
Absolutely. And it's interesting. Most people think, well, people get like help like this because they need the money.
Hmm.
That's the most important thing. Oh, and the help will be great. In reality, after it's over, they say, yeah, the money is great, but that's not why I did it. It was the
Right.
emotional support to get through that. And that emotional support is accruing to the female. And it's
Hmm.
her support that they're engender. And she's the one who's getting the most value of it. And we've been at this long enough to know that you explain what do we do to a spouse, and she's going to want it. And the reason she's going to want it is because that's going to be her job, and she's going to want to have help, when he passes away, because
Hmm.
generally people don't pass away at the same age, and actuarially you can show that it's the man before the woman.
Right. Yeah, and at Income Conductor, we actually pull in institutional actuarial longevity projections because we think it's really important that you incorporate those into the plan because clearly statistics show that a husband and wife are not going to live out to the age of 95. There is going to be somebody who predeceases the other, and most likely it will be the man. So right out of the gate, you're showing that spouse, that, the wife, that you're keeping her in mind in the planning process and looking at that, possible situation of him predeceasing her. And that leads to a lot of specialized tax planning and other planning that, is focused on her financial wellness as a widow. But this just seems like such a natural fit, because if she has this in place with Everest, that's one more thing she doesn't have to worry about, and one more value add that you as an advisor can bring to that client.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I just want to remind people, if you have any questions, please submit them into the Q&A box. And Mark, while people are doing that, could you share your views on what you see as future trends in the industry and how they might impact clients?
Sure. I think one of the big trends is consumers wanting more advisor help, not just in financial services, but in everything from what they buy to where they go. They're looking for a trusted advisor. And as we've talked before, I think the advisor role is going to morph into more of a quarterback. It's going to be the quarterback of the family. The quarterback doesn't run the ball every time, or you may throw it, and block, but he is the hub of what's going on, and that trend is going to continue. So advisors are going to have to think of themselves as more than just kind of running through the investment numbers, that they're going to have to kind of build out a team around them, like a football team, that does other parts of it for them, because they can't do everything. And there are groups like ours that are out there that can take and shoulder a lot of that load. And again, all the benefit kind of goes to the quarterback. The quarterback looks pretty smart because he's on a winning team, and they're seeing a lot of value in that.
Right, but they're kind of leading the charge, right? They're the go-to
exactly.
person.
And keep in mind also, the consumers think, if you ask them who should be in charge advising me about funeral planning, they say the financial advisor is the person, not the minister, not their next door neighbor or a family member, because they know they don't know anything about it. They're assuming the advisor is the one who has more knowledge of this, because it has a financial impact, but it's also something they're not very comfortable or know much about, kind of like the investing side of things. So you're already being viewed as the go-to person. This is a very easy way to lean into it. The second part, I would say that the future will be more of the decisions will be made by women. Right now, about 80% of all decisions in a household, especially purchasing decisions, are made by women. And that is only going in one direction, and that is up. We are in the middle of the great wealth transfer, but I would also argue that we're in the middle of the great gender transfer. That gender transfer is going from male to female, and there's nothing that's going to stop it. I actually have, if anybody's interested in learning more about this, there's a book that I've read I think is really great. It's called Winning Her Business. It's by Bridget Brennan. It's a simple, easy read. She's, it's how to transform the consumer experience for the world's most powerful consumer, and that's a woman. So that market is out there. Read that book. You'll see a lot of what we talk about. It's not just financial advisors that are being faced with this. All companies are being faced with it, whether you sell investment advice or you sell cars or tennis rackets. Everybody's being faced with this, and that's kind of where the consumer wants. And lastly, I'll just say that, make a pitch that Everest, we're going to do a pilot program in the spring. And if anybody's really interested in being part of it, we're going to be recruiting some advisors to see if they'd like to try this with their clients and see how it goes. And actually, Bridget Brennan would be kind of involved with that. If you have some interest in that, you can send me an email. My email address is mduffey, Duffey, @everestfuneral.com.
Great. Well, what a great opportunity, Mark. So, Tom, do we have any questions?
Yeah. So first one, can you please talk about your fee structure for clients who do not have an insurance policy?
Well, actually, that's a great question. This would be a new venture for us. But the fees we don't know be part of the pilot program to see, but it looks like it'll probably be in the dollar per client per month area, and that would include the client, the spouse, and their children 26 and under. And all the tools that we have too. We have lots of tools like Tenzing, which is unlimited data storage. We have a will prep feature, price finder, pricing reports, things like that. All that
Wow,
would be included.
that's quite the value.
Next question. I'm late to joining. If you've answered this, please ignore. How do they work with advisors and how do both get paid?
Well, we're generally, like I said, we haven't worked with advisors yet. This will be a new idea. We're with investment advisors. We work with life insurance, advisors all the time, but our service is attached to a policy. This will be different. This will not have any product related to it. It would just be a subscription-based fee paid by the advisor.
And it would be up to the advisor whether they wanted to pick up the fee or
Right.
charge it back to the client. But having access to that service and all the tools and everything, and being able to incorporate that into the financial planning process will be more than worth it for the client if that's how they decide to pay the fee.
Yeah, we're dealing with millions of clients right now. So the fact we can keep the fee really very, very low is because we have such a big installed base.
Hmm.
Um, so an insurance licensed advisor can sell policies through your firm?
They don't sell through our firm. They'll sell through whoever their MGA is or whatever. We one of our big products is with Transamerica. We have a couple of different products with them. It's available through all distribution all across the United States, insurance distribution.
Right. So that's the insurance side,
Right.
right?
Right.
That's the market you're in right now, and you're looking to move over into the retail financial professional space, the advisory space, which
Right.
would be a subscription-based offering of Everest services, correct?
That'd be correct.
And last question, do you provide any benchmark or instructional information to help an advisor speak with more authority on this topic?
Absolutely. We have lots of training that we can do both for the advisor and for their clients. And so first step is the advisor, get them up to speed. We're very accomplished at that. We have those all in place, and we can get everybody to be much more knowledgeable about what it is without having to be an expert.
Any more, Tom?
That's all the questions we have for now.
All right. Well, I'm going to ask you to make a parting pitch, Mark, some parting words on this subject, and also remind people of your contact information along with your website.
Okay, great. Again, thank you for having me on today. I would just kind of close with, no one wants to talk about funeral planning. Nobody. Uh, Even funeral directors don't like to talk about it, and especially if you don't really know much about it. It's just it doesn't feel right. People spend way more time planning their vacation than even plan their retirement, and this one is way down the list. In fact, 98% of the clients we help don't even have a written plan. Their plan is, honey, if something happens to me, call Everest and they'll take care of it. So I think that's the takeaway here is there is a way to solve a number of problems. Loss of clients, maybe shrinking market share. You can now go on the offense and use a tool that you would think would be the last thing you would want to use, and that's talking about funeral planning. But it's because of who the target market is. It's that female spouse that is going to make the decision on her own, and she is looking for help, and that's kind of what we're here to do.
And your website?
Website is everestfuneral.com, and my email address is mduffey@everestfuneral.com. Wonderful.
Well, I just think that this is a great service that you're offering to, the end consumer. I'm interested in taking part in it as well. So, great information, Mark. Congratulations on, being an innovator in this portion of the industry. It's wonderful. And thank you so much for sharing your expertise and everything with our attendees today.
Great. Well, thank you for inviting me.
All right. And thanks to everyone who joined us on the webinar. Make sure that you watch out for our next webinar with the Trailblazer in December. Have a great evening.